I knew if I didn't act on it that I would regret not. It actually coincided with a breakup as well. So breakup, and then I was like, you know what? This is now what I'm going to do. Provide amateur footballers with an international football experience. I lost my dad when I was 5. I went through the passing of my granny the day before my mum and stepdad's wedding. My granddad then passed. Hero and villains come from the same backstory. The way you respond to it and how you deal with it is going to determine the person that you become out of it eventually. Bad things are going to happen to me in my life. That's inevitable. But whether I suffer or not is ultimately my choice. If I don't do this, no one's coming to save me.
Today, I'm joined by Ben Tudor, an old teammate turned entrepreneur who's now building international football tours that bring men together through competition, connection, and purpose. This episode goes deeper than football. We explore how heartbreak can become a turning point, how men learn to navigate emotion, the importance of intuition, and what happens when you finally choose to back yourself. We talk about friendship, discipline, long-distance relationships, identity shifts, and the courage it takes to build something that actually matters. It's raw, honest, and full of real lessons for any man on his growth journey. If you took value from this one, support the mission. Please kindly subscribe and leave a review. It helps the show grow, and it means that we can reach more men who are ready to take that next step. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage Podcast. Enjoy. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, most welcome. Great to have you on. And I'm really looking forward to this actually, because for those who don't know, Ben and I, we actually played football together back in the day. Was it 2012? Or was it earlier?
No, a bit later than that. We were 15, 16, must have been at the time. So yeah, 2015, 16, I reckon, around that time.
Okay. It's been a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oxford Royals.
Legendary stuff, that. Cup winners as well. That's important. We were.
I'm going to put a photo up on the video so people
have to
check it out. There's the context, and it ties in with what you're doing now. So let's jump into that. What are you doing now? What are you focusing on? And how's it tie in with the rest of your journey?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably quite appropriate that the way that we met is through football because of what I do now. So I basically provide amateur footballers with an international football experience. So trying to basically allow as many people as possible to be able to play football abroad, but also not just that side of it. We're trying to create connections through it as well. So the fact that we're here through a connection through football is why I say that it's really appropriate. So yeah, essentially what I do is take amateur teams on what's currently a 4-night trip. So business is called Tiki Taka Tours. We get people out on the Wednesday, currently based in Albufeira, Portugal. 4 teams on one tour. So different walks of life. I've executed a couple in October, which was 2 very successful tours and really good to see and sort of build the momentum for. So yeah, we're getting 4 different teams from, as an example, one of the last tours was Margate, Liverpool University, Middlesex and Yorkshire. So, across the country, different demographics, different age groups ranging from like 20 to 30, getting them out there on a tour together on the Wednesday evening, sort of introducing them to each other, welcoming them, sort of creating those connections with the group, welcome drinks, I call it. And then on the Thursday, have a little group stage, round robin, everyone plays everyone. Friday, a finals day, semi-finals, finals, third place playoff, things like that. And then a presentation in the evening, all filmed, all with a videographer and a professional camera, showing back some of the best clips on the Friday from both on and off the pitch, and just creating like a really good atmosphere and environment where it's competitive, people want to win, but ultimately you're on holiday where you're with mates, you're meeting new people who are all there because they enjoy football, they enjoy travel. And yeah, what's been great to see is the connections people have made from the tours. I had one guy from one of the teams who lived near the Liverpool Uni Boys. He went and played for their team a week later. Guys just sort of staying connected through it, the group chat staying active, everyone's sort of really feeling how special the experience is meant to be in my head and that connection that's created. So yeah, that's essentially my, what I'm doing at the moment, where my journey has brought me. My 2 passions, travel and football, sort of at the same time. I have fun on every single one I go on. I've done 3 so far and they've all been an absolute blast. So yeah, very grateful to be able to be doing something that I'm so passionate about as well.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome idea. Really cool. And I also like this idea of actually people go there for the football, they think it'll be a laugh with their mates, but actually there's a kind of a deeper thing going on there. People actually connecting with people. And I think men generally, they tend not to sit down and chat with each other. A lot of the time they bond through doing stuff and just getting active, being competitive. So I love that aspect to it too.
I think that's, for me, part of the beauty of it. Like ultimately, a lot of the guys have said, I've never played abroad before, and have literally said, I would never have played abroad without this or without Tiki Taka Tours. And I'm like, that makes me feel great as well. But seeing in front of my eyes, like the guys from different teams socializing, the nights out, the packing out a whole karaoke bar and like all singing like the songs together, the connections that people create from it, and actually seeing people and hearing that they have felt how special that connection is. From the first tour, so the first tour, for a bit of context, was basically all of my mates plus one team who saw it on the socials and loved the content so much. They were like, look, we want to come on this. We don't care if you've not done one already. Group of 18-year-old lads from Essex who turned out to be really good value as well. So they sort of really bought into it. And, everyone, for me, really special because I've got all my friends who are believing in my business concept and helping me bring it to life there. And I sort of felt really emotional at the end of that because I was like, this is awesome. Like, I've just had a great holiday with my mates, and I sort of, rather than doing it on the tour side, I was like, you know what, I'm going to live it as one of the group. And at the start, the flip was so quick. It was like, I'm going to be professional here. I'm going to host it. I'm going to like welcome the boys. And they all came and I was like, oh, can I get you a beer? Can I get you a beer? And I was like, all right, I'm going to flip it and I'm going to do it with the boys and like live it and see what it's like from that side. And I'm very glad I did because it was like really special stuff. Like everyone really grateful and had like such a sick experience. And that was great to see. And then it was like building up to ones with strangers, seeing if that same thing would happen. And I think because I've created that sort of environment where you're meeting everyone on the Wednesday and you're getting to know each other before you even kick a ball, you get on the pitch, there's already that camaraderie, that sort of back and forth. People still want to win and it's competitive, but ultimately off the pitch, whatever happens on it, even though there are maybe a couple heavy challenges, which, at the end of the final, there was a bit of a scuffle between two of the teams, but I sort of nipped it in the bud and they came up after like, sorry about that, like all stays on the pitch. And that's exactly what I want. So that competitive on the pitch, but whatever happens on it, you leave it there, you have a pint together after the game, and ultimately you're like mixing with the other teams, and that's what it's all about really for me.
I really love that as well because it humanizes the other people. And I remember recently I returned to my own 5-a-side, 6-a-side in London. Yeah. And when you don't know the opposition, there is it is quite intense.
Yeah. It's easy to kick someone that you don't know, right? Like,
it is. And
so
then
much easier.
You hear your teammates and they go, oh, this guy, oh, that guy. And yeah, I like this idea of, okay, there's that. You go out, you put on your suit of armor, and you go back and you're relaxing after, and you actually connect with people. So
yeah, I think the Wednesday achieves that massively because people get there and it's like, I always say this to people, it's like, you're not going to go studs up on someone that you just had a beer with the night before. Like that's the important context. So like, I wouldn't have people arrive and then play on the same day because you are going up against someone that you don't know. But ultimately, if you get there and you see the other guys, you're like, oh, they're here for the same reason we are. Holiday with our mates, play football abroad, and ultimately the wider experience. So then the atmosphere when you get on the pitch, it's just like everyone's buzzing to play and everyone's not taking it too far like it is to do when you don't know someone. So yeah, making sure you get both sides right. I know that it won't always be the case. There will be people who take it too far, but ultimately when I welcome the boys round and get in the group, I say, look, we have like a no violence policy here. Like if you're doing anything that is disproportionate to what has happened to you, like we're not having it. So it's like setting the tone from the off so people know like, look, I want them to be competitive. If it's a bit of back and forth, I don't mind it. But if it's something that escalates too much, then that's enough and you're out basically.
Yeah, got to have the boundaries enforced. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
It's also a good point because it's like that meme I used to see back in the day where it was trying to organise a trip in the lads group chat. And there's always, I remember there was always something that came up for someone or life gets in the way. But I think you kind of need someone else to come in and organise it and be gifted that opportunity. And then it kind of sparks an idea. Because I think we do get quite wrapped up in our routines and
100%.
There's tons of excuses as well, right?
Yeah, so it's really easy for an idea to come into a group chat and that not to happen. And part of the reasons that I do this is whenever an idea comes into a group chat, I'm typically the one who tries to make it happen because I enjoy the logistics and stuff of traveling. I know that if I don't do it, it might not be executed as well as I would hope for it to be executed. And an example of this is like I went to Thailand with my mates, as I mentioned, last New Year, and I decided to join them quite late. And as I got in, I was like, right, what's the plans? And they were like, we're landing in Bangkok on the 27th. I was like, what else? And they're like, nothing. I was like, right, okay, so we're going to go here for a few days, like booked it all. And they were all like, wow, thank you. Like they were like so glad that I joined. But ultimately it is that thing. It's like, if you have an idea in a group chat, I'm here to get that off the ground. And I like relate to that meme that you like, a lot of groups experience that. They experience an idea, a holiday or whatever is coming into the group chat, but no one has the urgency or stuff to create it. Ultimately, this is like removing all of that middle ground. It's you put the idea in, a few people say yes, and then I'll literally like sort the rest for you. So like as soon as you give me that yes, it's feet up. Like once you're sort of locked in, I'll sort the rest for you. You don't even have to like worry about it and playing on that. And because people, like you say, everyone's got other things in their lives, but having something to look forward to as well that you maybe would speak about, but quite often it wouldn't make it out the group chat. Making it out the group chat, making it as easy as possible, so it's like friction free, absolute ease for the consumer is part of obviously the whole idea, because people pay for things to be made easy for them, and it's also like affordable stuff as well. So trying to kill two birds, one stone there.
Well, also it leads to a good point, which is that sometimes because you're the one who's actually happy doing this stuff, it seems like that naturally morphs into what you're doing now. So it's taking what you actually enjoyed and what you were good at, which other people perhaps weren't prepared to do. Is that how the idea came to fruition? And did you ever find it frustrating maybe that you wanted to get more stuff done, but people weren't really on board with it?
Yeah, so the idea, there's not like a eureka moment, but I always relate back to one holiday that I went on with my uni mates last summer. So summer 24, we went to Tenerife in July, and it was our first year sort of out of uni. So we all wanted to get back. One of our mates was flying back from Bangkok for the summer. We're like, right, we're going somewhere. And a few ideas were sent in, and we all ended up booking to go to Tenerife, but it was on a package holiday website, and we all booked in groups of 2. So flying from different places on different things. And it was like, as we were looking at it, I thought, I'll just like take a look to see if there's any hotels with pitches on. And because I know my mates through uni, and that's playing football there. We all played in the same 6-a-side team and all happened to be a pretty good team as well, which is obviously helps, but ended up living with a lot of the boys. And yeah, that experience of trying to get that together and it being like, oh, groups of 2, like, oh, who's people arriving at different times? It was sort of like, I was like, damn, this could be made so much easier, like so much easier. And a couple of group chats, you know, where it's like, yeah, you mentioned certain holidays and they don't get off the ground. So it's partly from personal experience and then partly from, like you say, having that urgency myself when an idea for a trip, because I love to travel. I've sort of took a gap year after uni, traveled around the world, done interrailing, done Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, all these different places. So it's sort of like a second nature for me now. And it's also something my mum's very good at. So it's just sort of like, we're very similar type A type people. So I'll always want to make sure that all the logistics are planned seamlessly for anything that I do. So it just bleeds perfectly into what I'm doing now. I just managed to get it to combine it with football, which is ultimately my main passion. So yeah, so when I had the idea, I was actually sat with 2 of my best mates, just having a couple of drinks at the pub. I'd mentioned it once before to one of them, and I just started off the top of my head riffing about the idea. And these aren't 2 football guys. They're sort of rugby or other sports, just not massive interest in football. And the more I was saying it to them, and the more they were like, actually, this is a really good idea. And then the more I was selling it to them, I was selling it to myself as well. So I was convinced. And then I went from that, I made a group chat with them too, and I was like, this is me keeping myself accountable. This is what I'm going to do. That was April 2024. So that was last year, essentially off the back of booking that July holiday, really. And then from then it was how not if this is going to work, it's how do I then make this work and get it operational. So
well, that's a wicked point, because a lot of the time we all have ideas but never actually act on it.
Yeah.
So I think holding yourself accountable is like, that's the game changer, really.
Yeah, big time.
Are you going to be the one who actually follows through on his word?
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic.
And I was sort of in limbo just in my career in general. So I was trying to find I was actually, I think at the time, at an unpaid sports internship at a sports marketing agency, really trying to get my foot in the door in sports. I had a little stint in real estate and just realized it wasn't for me. I would have had to do more education, masters, APC, things like that. And it's just like, that wasn't for me. Then stepped into sports marketing role, which was great exposure. And then I was there as I was having this idea, and I was just sort of thinking, the longer that went on, you're like, you know what? As I was sat there and I had free time, I was looking for pitches, I was looking for hotels, I was sort of doing it alongside. And then, got to the summer and had I was actually away for the Euros in Germany, so football-related trip with 4 mates again, which was unreal. Then that Tenerife trip 2 weeks later. And then I got back and I was like, you know what? This is now what I'm going to do full time. It was actually coincided with a breakup as well. So breakup, and then I was like, 3 days later, I was like, you know what? This is now what I'm going to do and put my energy towards and put my time into. And from that point on, I went full time. Didn't go back to the sports internship, found some part-time work to work in the evenings alongside. And then all my days since last August have been spent basically trying to get this off the ground pretty much.
So you went all in.
Yeah, man, all in. And I knew at that point that it was a transformative choice. I knew that was sort of what I needed. I was like, I could either let this situation beat me or get the better of this situation, become a better person out of it. And ultimately, like, there is nothing I would rather be doing in the world than, when this becomes successful, going on these trips, hosting them, facilitating them for other people, bringing the experience to others. So I just thought, rather than wallowing in my own misery, I may as well make something good out of it, put my time towards it, and slowly from there, it all just started to pick up really. And I managed to use that situation to put me in a pretty good place.
Let's dive into this then. All right, so how long were you with your partner for in the first place?
4.5 years.
So that's a long period of time.
Yeah.
That's very long. And at that stage, I imagine, has just become a norm in your life. Right? Yeah. It's become so normalized, this dynamic. So leading up to that then, do you find that kind of sent you to a place where you perhaps hadn't been to before? Yeah,
big time. Also, because throughout, I would say, the start of 2024, I was out of uni, was also starting to learn more about myself. I could sort of, I think it's a bit cliche, but like, people talk about the frontal lobe developing around the age of 25. I felt like I was like living and breathing that as it was happening, like self-development stuff, just reading more, learning more about the world, myself, my own perspective, all these different things. And sort of, I could feel myself growing in a certain way. And then, it obviously put me in a situation I hadn't been before. That was sort of from the start of uni until then. And then for me, it's just like, okay, line in the sand. What am I going to do with this new chapter? How am I going to make the most out of it? And thankfully I used it as a bit of a driver really for myself. Like, why not put myself in the best situation out of this? Because ultimately now it's me. Like, you go from being sort of feel like your responsibilities are split to, oh, now it's just me. And I'm like, you got obviously friends and family and stuff, but it's that mindset of, okay, I'm now on my own. What am I going to do about this?
And it's interesting because by the sounds of it, it presented an opportunity to you. And before then, because as you say, when you go into a relationship, you are kind of responsible for someone else. I think if you're not careful, sometimes we can sacrifice our own needs and wants in order to make the other person happy. But it's all subconscious, right? Yeah.
And I think also on reflection, maybe I would have made that decision sooner had it just been me on my own as well. So like, I was obviously thinking about, getting some immediate income because I needed a job, because she had a job. We're doing like, wanting to go on holidays, things like that. And then it sort of happened. And I'm like, okay, now I have this freedom of choice, more of a freedom of choice, it felt like anyway. And I just used it to follow because like I said, I'd sort of been coming to more of the perspective of, if I'm going to only be here for another however many years, I may as well make those ones enjoyable and sort of put some grind in now, try and make it happen, try and make it something that I want to do, work for myself, have that freedom of time, freedom of choice. And I just had this idea, and it was one of those things that like slowly like niggling away at me in my head. And I knew if I didn't act on it that I would regret not. So I'm very thankful that I took that decision, because I know I could be sat here doing something else, maybe earning good money, probably not in something that I'm as passionate about. But I think I would have been sat here, whether it's now 5, 10, 20 years time, thinking what would have happened if I had acted on that. So luckily, you always regret the things you don't do, right? Luckily, I ended up doing it, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, but it's so funny. You kind of need, I think, a bit of a shift to your reality for you to then start considering this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think before then, and I can only think about my journey, along with other guys I've spoken to, where when you first get into relationship dynamics, especially when you're young, I think you can place a lot of importance of them, and you're kind of navigating and you're finding out a lot about yourself for the first time. And I imagine once that's taken away from you, it's like, oh, hang on a sec, that was my sort of sense of identity in a way. Hang on, I was a boyfriend, I was doing this. And it's only when that's taken away, you think, okay, who do I want to become now? Because that old me, that old identity was dead. I've got to build something new. Yeah. So I think that's perhaps a bit of a rarity, I think, to go so quickly into something else, because you can end up quite lost after a while. I think to go into that straight away, I think it takes a lot of, I mean, it doesn't surprise me because you were telling me about the accountability piece before, how you just get up and get on with it. Where does that come from?
To be fair, I mean, I obviously say that it was that week straight after that I made that decision. It does by no means mean I wasn't struggling. Like, I went through, because I was sort of blindsided basically, and it's just sort of like completely out of the blue. So it was getting through that, but it was that decision of like, sort of an immediate decision of like, say, an opportunity to create something better of myself from the situation. And ultimately, I guess the accountability thing just comes from more realization that if I don't do this, like, no one's coming to save me. If I don't make the choices and do the things that I want to do, no one else is going to come here and be like, oh, here's like that dream life that you wanted, by the way. Like, oh, nice, thank you. And ultimately, it's more satisfying when you get to that place of where I believe that it's going to become whatever path it ends up taking. It'll be more satisfying because I know it's come from the work that I've put in and the consistency of turning up every day and continuing to work towards it. By no means am I saying that I'm perfect. I still have little things that, you know, maybe I get frustrated about that I do, but I'm always thinking of being consistent, keeping on, like, stacking days is something that I keep saying to myself at the moment. Just keep stacking the days of doing, because excellence, it comes over just sort of doing that 1%, 2% better every day, or giving whatever percentage you're able to each day, putting that towards it. Some days, whether you're tired, whether you're run down, emotional, stuff's happening live, like maybe 10% is all you've got, but if you're giving that 10%, you're giving 100%. So it's like making sure that whatever I'm able to give that day, I'm giving it, because if I don't, then it's only going to be me to blame that I don't get the outcomes that I'm looking for.
Well, that's a wicked mindset to have. And I think we go through different seasons in life too. Because I remember once I went through I call it a breakup. It was a relationship dynamic. And once I went through that, the drive I had to improve my life was so big. Yeah. So I was exactly the same as yourself. I was like, all these little things. I did meditation, cold showers, all this cool stuff. And I was so disciplined. And that hunger, that drive was so big. Yeah. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, I still embody certain habits, right? Like the gym, for example, still doing that every day. But now I'm thinking that drive that I had then, that was a real strong one, because I was so determined to make something of myself. And it sounds like you had that as well. It was that breakup that really pushed you, right? Yeah.
And what you're saying now just reminds me of a quote that I heard that's, hero and villains come from the same backstory, but the villains let what happened to them and sort of, you know, think about that and deep it and feel victimized, whereas the hero uses it to become the better version of himself and the best version. So it's like the same thing can happen to two different people. Ultimately, the way you respond to it and how you deal with it is going to determine the person that you become out of it eventually. So you either let it consume you or let it take you to wherever your mind is easy to take, because, you know what, we're like survival animals, right? And we always think of the danger, and it's easy to go down that spiral. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is the paying attention to the thoughts that are the ones that bring the anxiety and the worry and things like that. Or you can, when those thoughts arise, just sort of drift it and then have that focus. And if you know, and you got that routine, you got that, you know, I'm going to keep being consistent, keep doing this, even though those things come up to mind. And sometimes you may pay attention to some of them, but if you're doing all these things and you have that long-term vision, then it's much easier to get there, you know?
Yes. And again, we talk about motivation, and you've just stumbled upon it perfectly, and you've put it in a really nice set of words, where if you have a place where you want to go, if you have a new identity, a new vision to go to, then that will keep you going. Yeah. And doesn't necessarily mean we sort of ignore all the stuff that comes up, but we've still got that front of mind. We still have a place to go. So I wonder, when that did happen, obviously you found something and you're like, right, this is it, let's go for it. How did you deal with that process initially? Because the breakup, as you've alluded to, it's a big shift in your life. Did you have like a support system in place, friends perhaps you've spoken to?
Yeah.
And you've mentioned something there, like even just letting anxiety thoughts, just let them flow, observe them, mindfulness. But I think a lot of this stuff doesn't come naturally to men.
Yeah.
So is that all the stuff you sort of picked up in your self-development journey?
Yeah, 100%. I think if you ask anyone who knows me on a deeper level, they'll probably tell you that I'm an emotional person. Not necessarily, I think that has negative connotations, but I'm maybe sensitive is the word that I use actually, because I think that can also be something really important as well. So, you know, I obviously let myself feel everything that I needed to. I have a great family. I'm sort of still living at home. So my parents, I was constantly surrounded. I had really good mates reaching out. So luckily enough, those connections were the ones that brought me through. And then, yeah, just sort of developing that mindset. I did a lot of reading. So I was sort of going through that anyway, but a few books that just helped me think about the world in a different way, and sort of kept going on that journey of where my mind was going to and growing and looking at different perspectives. There was actually one book that I read that I almost studied. It took me weeks to read because I was going back and reading it, and it was called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. If you haven't read it, it's sort of like one of those transformational books that just makes you think about things completely differently, because it's about how the way that we've evolved as human beings hasn't prepared us for the world that we're in. Like, as I said earlier, we immediately identify danger, and that's like the stress, the cortisol levels of everyday life, of, you know, that 9 to 5. We're not created for that. And it's talking about how people who have gone through all these different things, and so many, all backed up by scientific evidence, so many studies of, you know, people who this leads into your sort of nice guy theory. It's like people who suppress their real emotions and try and say this. There are like real life scientific evidence of the correlations between that and so many diseases, so many things that come up in your body as a result of it. And I found it so interesting and fascinating, is like coming to the realization, because I guess it is when you actually deep it, is like the kind of creatures that we are, for want of a better word. Like, we're not ultimately prepared for the world that we're in. So giving myself a little bit of slack on that, and like, I'm not meant to be doing all these things. I'm not meant to have so many inputs and overstimulation, because ultimately we are every day overstimulated. And seeing all these things about people who are suppressing certain emotions, or doing things a different way, living certain lives, or going through certain jobs, and then getting to the end of their life and being like, oh, I actually wish I'd done it differently. And almost everyone gets to the end of it and be like, oh, no, don't hand me my trophies. You know, I want the people I love around me, and like realizing what's important around it as well. So yeah, a lot of different things really through that period. But thankfully, yeah, mates, I'd say my family, my mates, and sort of my willingness to understand more about my brain throughout that process is probably what pulled me through it.
Yes, there's two different ways we can go here. I definitely will touch upon the friendship shortly, because I think that's a really interesting part, especially as we grow ourselves. Not necessarily everyone grows with us, and to hear whether your friendship circle adjusted. But you mentioned something about being a sensitive person. I can really relate to that, because I've always been very sensitive, and it's taken me a while to really own that. Like, I am a sensitive person, and because my whole life I was suppressing it, I never really felt comfortable to just be that.
Yeah.
Like, especially in front of even parents as well.
Yeah.
Like, I've always had this belief that, okay, you're a man, you should shut off your emotions. Even now I'm starting to like feel it.
Yeah. It's incredibly freeing as well, right?
It is. But has that taken a while for you to really embrace? Or have you always just embraced that sensitivity?
I think that's actually important context as well for my life. So I lost my dad when I was 5. So he died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, sort of knew it was coming. I was, again, not many memories from that. So I've essentially, although my stepdad entered my life in 2008, obviously raised largely by my mum, because it took a while for that relationship and dynamic for them to grow. Obviously very grateful for him coming into my life and having that father figure now. But I think that is partly why, you know, I'm sort of very much a mummy's boy. Obviously sort of didn't quite get the choice, but like, I'm very much, compared to my brother, I'm more of a mummy's boy than he is. And I think that's partly played into the sensitivity side, obviously responding, and the things that go on inside my body that maybe I'm not consciously thinking about from the trauma of that's happened. But I've always been very like emotional in terms of I would used to let things really bring me down and be like, as soon as I was in a bad mood, like good luck getting me out of it. And then anytime, so we do like a memorial golf day every year for my dad as well. And the older I'd got, like it would be my uncle passing on, be like, boys, do you want to say anything? And I'd always think about trying to say something. And then I'd just like start crying because I'd see my granny crying. And like, that's obviously a very intense situation in that sense. But I think before I'd got to that stage, as I was getting out of uni and I went through the passing of my granny the day before my mum and stepdad's wedding. So that was a real something to deal with because we were, I was speaking at the wedding and she was a big person in my mum's life. She sort of saw her as a second daughter. So that was, and, very much welcomed my stepdad as well. That happening so soon. So that was really tough on the family in general. And then going through speaking to my granddad throughout that happening. So, but getting up to that year, I'd say 2024 was like a really big year for me because my granddad then passed and I spoke at his funeral, which I would never have thought I would have had the ability to do because I would have been I'm normally the person who gets up there and starts just crying uncontrollably. And I did get there at the end. Like I'd had like last few lines, obviously the way it happens. But I think throughout time, I've managed to control it a little bit more, but not suppress it. I think there's a key difference. I'll control it because I know that if I'm standing up there and I just start crying, that's not going to be an effective eulogy. But if I'm then like, I'm talking about his life and I was lucky enough to have so many things and great things to say and a really strong relationship with all my family in general. So I think that environment has allowed me to be sensitive and be the person that I ultimately am at heart and not try and shy away from that because whether it's positive or negative, like those emotions for me, I will feel it. Like I think the passion side of it as well comes from it. Like like a big, obviously football fan in general, but like massive Chelsea fan, and the passion that you feel when you're watching, like especially something big, like I was at uni watching the Champions League final when we won it, and I was like sort of running around the house, and it's like got to share that with my mates, even though they weren't, but like it brought the energy up of the whole place. So all these different things of the way that you express your emotion, positive and negative, I've always felt the safe space to be able to do it. And even though when I did cry, and like I'd used to go to his grave and like I'd cry and hate it, I'd hate going because it meant I was going to cry. But like over time, I sort of was just like, that's kind of just a normal thing, like the grieving process, and something that I came to terms with more as well as the grieving process. It's like I used to not want to mention the people that had passed because it would feel painful, but ultimately that's not doing them justice because you want to keep their memory alive by speaking about them, which I now realize. And I'm now like proud to talk about certain stories about granny, granddad, dad, all these, and the ones that I'm lucky enough to hear because my family obviously passed them on and things like that. But I think that whole context, that was like a bit of a tangent, but I think that whole context is important to the person that I am in terms of how I've got to this place, in terms of understanding my emotions a bit more. And I feel things so deeply in my body compared to my brain. So like if something happens, I'll feel it first rather than sort of think it. So I think that is a bit of obviously a blessing and a curse at times. But yeah, that's sort of, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's a bit of context that is important on the emotional side.
Mate, that was a beautiful tangent. That's one of the best tangents in the history of the conversation. Wow. What a response. I mean, that's the sort of thing you really only learn through lived experience, right? And I just love how supportive your environment was of that, because they've kind of been through a similar thing, I think, in a way. So they're able to understand that, and you can kind of be yourself. And like you said, I think eventually when you actually stop resisting the crying, I think it actually feels really therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's really nice if you actually let yourself do that. But I think for me, I taught myself to suppress those emotions for years. So I had all this anger, all this sadness, and I would just always, I just learned it was my defense mechanism just to shove it down. So it's only over the last, well, I would say maybe 2-3 years where I've really allowed myself to feel and just feel it. And you mentioned something there. Actually, we tend to use our thoughts to rationalize how we're feeling about something, whereas actually the pain's just in our body.
Yeah,
it could very well be an emotion that we stored when we were younger, and we're using our adult minds to rationalize it. Sometimes we just need to feel it.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you've picked up that ability, I think is wicked. I think it takes a lot of time to actually learn to do that rather than sort of entertaining the thoughts, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
I think that's a wicked bit of
just trusting your gut, isn't it? Like there is, I think I wouldn't be able to point to something specific, but I've read a bit of like the actual science behind trusting your gut is human intuition. It's like, again, as survival creatures, taking that path that's going to give us the best chance of survival. And sometimes if you ignore that, you always think, oh, like I knew I should have just. So ultimately I try and just follow that as much as possible and just see where it takes me, because it's there for a reason. That's what I always think.
How have you learned to listen to that gut feeling or know what it is? Because I know we've spoken a lot about intuition on the podcast before, and it's been really cool in my journey to start seeing the differences between, okay, I know that calm voice is my sort of intuition, and whenever it's like a loud, fearful voice, I won't entertain it. I'll just kind of let it flow, as you were alluding to earlier. But it's knowing, okay, this feels right. This feels in alignment. What was the process like for you to sort of learn what that gut was? Do you think it's just because you've allowed yourself to feel all the time? You've just learned your body to so well to a point that it's pretty easy for you?
Yeah, I think, don't get me wrong, I still have the thoughts and stuff, and it's actually a key active decision of me whether I'm following certain ones or not, and I still get myself caught up in things, as everyone does. That's just the way of the human brain. We have like hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day. It's impossible not to track, but it's identifying the important ones. And then ultimately, whenever I'm in any situation, I'll have some sort of underlying feeling in my body. And typically when I'm doing things that I'm passionate about, that I enjoy, or whatever it is, it's just sort of like that state of neutrality. There's nothing coming to me. Whereas, so I'm like sort of recently at the moment, I say like talk about this feeling in my body because I've had, again, another shift in my life recently of my recent girlfriend, her going away for 2 years. So like becoming long distance after having like 6 or 7 months together. And then like the feeling in my body in the week after was like, I could feel the stress and like, just because I was adjusting to the change. And that was like taking me away from work. But it's then like A, acknowledging it, B, trying to challenge whether it's useful, and then C, choosing the thoughts that are like, right now I can improve and move on. And rather than pay attention to the thoughts that are like thinking about what she's doing or where she is or worrying about her well-being, it's just sort of letting that relinquishing control, which was something that, again, I've grown into. I used to like always want to have or be able to control how things are going to go, as everyone does in their life, but sort of realizing that ultimately you're actually not going to over any situation really, apart from your own mindset on things. That's the only thing you can control. So that was probably the most freeing thing, was realizing that if I don't control the way that I think or the way that I act or the way that I listen to my body, things aren't going to turn out the way that I want, basically.
Again, it seems to be a process you learn over time through that experience, but also I think just being willing to grow, right? Throughout that, it's that mindset of, okay, I think as long as you have that mindset of, okay, I'm willing to learn about myself or willing to grow, I think you're going to be fine, because you're always going to be on an upward trajectory if you're taking that time. Like you said, some days you're just going to be feeling a bit shit and you're not going to be feeling up to it, but you're still looking to get better, or you're still in the process. And I think as long as you've got that mindset, you'll continue to go forwards in terms of your trajectory. And you alluded to something there, which was control. I think it's resistance that causes the pain. It's never the thing itself. It's the resistance we put on it, trying to control everything. And once you sort of learn that, again, like you said, sometimes you do sort of get caught up in it. But when you just let go and you realize, okay, you know what? It is what it is. Let's just see. Let's just deal with it.
That's a phrase that's thrown around a lot as well. It is what it is, but like it actually is one of those things that if you just remind yourself, like what will be, you don't have control. It just releases so much stress. And I think a quote that I was thinking about the other day: pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Bad things are going to happen. That's always going to be the case. But whether you choose to go down the mindset route and latch onto those negative thoughts that take you down that spiral, or you ultimately have the choice whether you choose to suffer from it or you can use it to make it a good situation or a bad situation. So yeah, that mindset of like, bad things are going to happen to me in my life, that's inevitable. But whether I suffer or not is ultimately my choice on the situation.
There's also a part of it which is knowing, I believe that it is part of the journey. It's quite literally part of the journey that you need to go through to get to that next level. And so even the relationship example, you might have needed that at that time to teach you something about yourself. So then now in your current relationship, you can show up as perhaps a better partner. You'll put your own needs first, and then that means that you can show up better and learn a lot more through your experiences that way when you have an open mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that learning process, like being comfortable with discomfort, and because that's the only way that growth is going to happen. But like you say, using the events that happen to you in your life for reflection, for understanding why things went that way, it can use you to eventually be a better person in all these different situations, as an entrepreneur, as a partner, as a friend, family member, all these different things. So I think that's really important, to be honest, because if you're constantly looking back and resenting a situation or how something played out, you're never going to be fully confident with who you are, because you've always got that dragging you back. And something that I heard once is that you can't truly love yourself if you don't appreciate the experiences that shaped you. And that is what you go into there, is like, with my previous relationships in my life, I wouldn't be the partner that I am now without those happenings and those learnings and the ability to communicate more effectively and make it a safe space. So that is all from the things that have happened to me in the past. The same in business and all these different things, challenging my own beliefs about what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, trying to do stuff better every day, family, friends, all these different things, like putting the effort in. It all comes back to that.
And in terms of your own circle then, right, because you're very growth minded and that's at the center of what you do. It's come up a lot in the podcast recently, right? You become who you spend the most time with. And if you want to become like someone else, surround yourself with them, and then that will become part of you. And I've witnessed it as well. We were talking beforehand, me being in Bali, surrounded by a different type of energy there. Everyone's into growth there. Everyone's growing either their business or themselves professionally. I say everyone who was kind of in the co-working places or who I was hanging out with, because I know there's different types of people who might go to Bali for different reasons, but those were the types of people I was hanging out with. And there's a big shift I found when I was there. How's that been in terms of your journey then, right? Because I know you went for a gap year and that would have expanded your belief system, which I think is super important. I think sometimes we can get into a bit of a routine, right? We go to school, especially in Surrey. I think this was a big thing I observed, right? You go to primary school with people, you then go to the same secondary school, then you go to uni with the same people. And so you going traveling must have done wonders for your belief system. So I want to know how that process has been for you in terms of your own friendships, and has there at times been a bit of a clash with your desire to grow maybe?
So the traveling thing definitely was something that opened my perspective. It was something that I was against when I was like 14, 15 maybe, because I was just like, I'm not going to, my brother was on a gap year. I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. Like I was always like, I want to be in Surrey around London. Like that was my sort of safe space. And then we went out there to visit him in Australia with the whole family. And I was like, this is actually quite cool. Like, I would actually love to experience more of this. Came back and said it to my two best mates and they were like, yeah, like, let's do it. So yeah, lucky enough to see that different part of the world, particularly Southeast Asia. It gives you the perspective of all the things that you have that a lot of people don't and that you take for granted, even just basic things. That I think is the most important perspective shift of doing something like that at the age of like 19, is realizing that the bubble that you live and grow up in isn't what everyone experiences. You know, you're lucky enough to have food in the fridge every day that you're not even paying for at that point, because it's like all from your parents. And that perspective shift was massive. And then experiencing that freedom, sort of going around in a camper van, you know, meeting so many different people from different parts of the world. That was definitely like transformative, and like massively grateful for that experience, because again, I don't think to be the person that I was without that, even though I'm a very different person from when I came back, because I was 19, I'm now 26. That's a lot of time to pass, right? Lucky enough to find a group of mates at uni who all align with me in terms of our perspective on life, our opinion that time with the people that matter is what's most important. We've all got very like strong relationship as a group of 8 of us still from uni, which I was speaking about the holiday about. And we're all very much about quality time together, about still trying to keep in touch, even though we're in different parts of the world. We got Beijing, 2 in Sydney, and then 4 of us sort of around, 5 of us around the UK. So yeah, very like dotted around, but still very close group of mates, and very lucky that we all sort of like met from different places. But you know, this, because my first year was lockdown. Then on that lockdown, we had like the calls and on the group chats and stuff, and playing Warzone or whatever it was, different things like that. But very lucky with that group because, and again, through that, we all went through growth within ourselves. Like fell out with a couple of them at the end of second year because of some certain things in the house, came back. We had a gap year, a placement year. So working in London, then went back, and the guy we fell out with, he was in Bath for the whole year playing cricket. He came back and apologized to each of us individually, and then we ended up all having the best 4th year with a proper group of 8. So yeah, having people that realize that it's about spending time together and not sort of what you do, or that's not what defines you. It's, you know, the people around you that define you, and they're all very family oriented, friendship oriented. We've all met each other's mates, so it shows that I think when you get along with the people that you know's circle, there's some sort of alignment there in general. And then yeah, obviously family along the way, just unconditional support. And then recently my girlfriend as well is like now challenging me and always like making me believe that I can be the best version of myself, and giving me reasons to think that as well. So a lot of different people. I've also like I was on a coaching I'm still in a coaching community for like business coaching, which a lot of the guys live in Bali. The mindset of the people in there, and seeing people continue to kill it, and like feeding off of their energy and their successes, and being on these calls with people who, we had a 2.5 hour call on mindset the other day, which was actually the day after my girlfriend left the country. And I was like, sat there after, I was like, that was exactly what I needed, thinking about the controllables, thinking about sort of being true to my identity and not letting all these different things, how I recenter myself when my thoughts are spiraling, all these different techniques and stuff. So yeah, that's actually been really transformative for me, as being a part of that. And yeah, the mates that are sort of supporting me on the journey as well. And you sort of realize when you're doing something like this, none of my circle really are doing similar things. I sort of have reached out to people like James Frost, he's obviously building his own thing. I've been in contact with him a little bit. It's nice to speak to people who, and like yourself doing your coaching, and it's nice to speak to people who can relate to it on some element of going out on your own, doing something a bit unconventional, and yeah, seeing where that goes. So I think connecting with people on that level is really important, because having those perspectives, and from the coaching and the community calls I have on that, seeing other people going through it, and that it's not always like sunshine and rainbows in that. Everyone always has like, you know, how can I improve? What am I doing? Whether it's sending in content to be evaluated to improve on, or just all these like different sales processes, whatever it is. So yeah, quite a plethora of different things that keep pushing me to be the better version of myself, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a wicked sort of environment you've set up for yourself. A lot of different factors in there. And you touched upon community. They're so important. I think especially as an entrepreneur, it can feel quite lonely at times if you're only doing it by yourself. I think that can be a way we self-sabotage sometimes, is by thinking we can do it all by ourselves, kind of like a lone wolf mentality. Yeah. When you have people who are better than you at what you do and are all on the same journey, I think it empowers yourself in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
And even just investing in yourself, I think it's one of the best investments you can make. You mentioned the coaching stuff there, travel. I'd consider that an investment in yourself as well. Definitely. I think it's the best thing you can do. And like similar to yourself in a way, I think for me, it was never about having more things. I think everything I'll spend money on most of the time is on myself. In terms of
I'm exactly the same.
Self-development.
I'm not bothered about like buying stuff. For me, it's always like this coaching thing, or like the travel. Like there will never be any money that I spend on going somewhere else that will be wasted, because it's like I'm getting a different experience. I'm removing myself from my environment, putting myself in different places, whether that's, you know, even if it's somewhere that I don't enjoy. That's one of those things, like the discomfort of like, oh, you then know what you like in a place, what you don't, all these different things. So yeah, I'm the same. I'm always about experience as opposed to like materials, really.
And was vulnerability a big part in forming these friendships then? Because you had the group of 8, and I feel like even that can be quite rare sometimes, being the age you are now. And I think even just meeting friends at uni and finding your people so early on. Yeah. So did you find that you were all pretty authentic straight away? I know it's a bit of a buzzword these days, but did you find that you were all kind of yourselves, or has that been a journey in and of itself?
I think within the group dynamic, it's like a little bit different for everyone. So like I would probably be able to tell you that, you know, one of my mates in particular, I know that he's always been the authentic version of himself, because you can just tell he's like, he just doesn't really particularly care what other people think about him or anything he does, which is sort of a mindset that he had from, I could tell from early on when I met him. And I think we've all sort of got to that point of, because I'm the second oldest in the group, but there's three of us sort of, and then in my school year, and then the rest are a bit younger. One of them I'm almost like 2 years older than. So that's a bit of a dynamic as well. It just like, I'm obviously older than him. I've had more years to experience whatever I've chosen to do with them, and sort of like going at a different pace and different routes and things like that. So yeah, I would say that the majority of us are, you know, because I don't think you'd be able to have the strength of those connections without people just being authentic to themselves. I wouldn't say it was like that at the start, but it also came from the connections we've made with each other. Like one of my mates went through a lot, just like mental health issues wise, and like we were living in the same house at the time, and I was like there for him a lot. So that's something that I saw him grow through, and now he's like one of the best versions of himself and like absolutely thriving, which is great to see. But it's not, and that university like life it's a bubble. It's not what real life is. That's why when you come out and everyone's taking time to adapt, and you probably become a different version of yourself through that anyway, and you're going from, you know, the lectures to then whether it's 9-to-5 work or entrepreneurship or whatever it is you go through, that's a bit of a reality check in itself. And everyone talks about missing uni, because obviously they are the best days. You have no responsibility. You can just mess about with your mates and not really care about the consequences. But that's sort of the whole point of it, is getting that out your system and having those memories and enjoying it, creating the friendships that last beyond it. And then having mates like I'm lucky enough to have that are all, just no bullshit. Just they'll say what they think. And that's ultimately brought us closer together, really. So,
yeah. And there's also big elements of that as well. Like your mate who was kind of struggling a bit. I think when you are vulnerable with the right people, I think you can and you will be rewarded for that.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think it takes, this is why going back, I think it was Men's International Men's Day. Yeah. And you see the line of vulnerability as strength, but it quite literally is. Because if you're going out there and you're seeking support, it might be a bit scary, but you asking help, that takes strength in and of itself.
Yeah,
and you'll always be rewarded for it. Like there's a couple of mates I can think of now, and whenever I'm having a bit of a rough time, I'll be like, hey, do you fancy a call? He'll call me, he'll be in Bali, and we'll just have a chat.
Yeah.
Because he sees me and he understands it, he gets it. And sometimes it's just having a bit of a call to just ground yourself. In Bali, sure, I'm surrounded by that energy. Whereas over here, it's a bit different. And when you're surrounded by a different environment, it can be tricky sometimes to remember everything that you've learned or the frequency you're vibrating on. So, I've always been rewarded for that. Same as Bali. You know, my friend Will, he was like very kind about the podcast studio. Had a tight budget at the time, and he was like, yeah, just film at my villa, I'll set it up for you. But that's only because I was willing to just be honest with him. Yeah. Just said, look, I've invested into all this different stuff. He just sorted me out. So
yeah, I've got a mate who the same is like when things are going rough, or sometimes it feels like he just calls me at those moments anyway. But he's always, and his name Will Sanders, you probably know. He's one of those people in my life, like post breakup, like recently the long distance started, like he'll just call me. Like he's one of those people, like when things are going shit, I know that he's always thinking of me, and whenever he has time, he'll just give me a ring. He'll always drop me a message, even if I've not replied to his last one because everything's too much or I'm just busy or whatever it is. He'll still send another one and be like, how's it going? And you know, one of my other mates is going through something similar, and I'm now making sure like I know how valuable that is to have. So I'm now like, okay, I'm going to keep messaging him and asking him how he's doing, even if he's not replying, because sometimes just knowing that person's there, offering the calling, even if you don't pick up, is like, that's actually massive. And having, whether it's just even just one mate doing that or a couple of mates doing that, it massively helps, because you then obviously connect with them on a deeper level as well, and they are there for you when it's shit. So then when you have any sort of success, they're the people that you can celebrate with and be like, I actually couldn't do this without you. That's what it's all about.
That's it. You remember the ones who were with you at the beginning. And so eventually when Tiki Taka Tours is all over the place, you're going to suddenly see all these people coming up to you. Oh, hey, man. It's like,
Yeah. Where were you at the start? Exactly that, man. Exactly that.
Where were you? Yeah. Fascinating. And again, I think it also ties in with another lesson I've reminded myself of, which is you kind of have to give a bit to receive, right? So again, you're helping out your mates and they'll help you in return. And I think that's kind of one of the ways in which the universe works. You know, whatever you put out there, you'll receive back. So I really like that. And I was keen because you mentioned your girlfriend in there. Sounds like she's really pushing you to become a better man in her own way, and I really resonate with that. To my girlfriend now, it's like, sure, we love each other as we are now, and we also love the version we're becoming as well, and we're pushing each other to do better. And I think when you find the right girl in your life, it will drive your life forward. Have you found that for yourself as well?
Yeah, massively so. And I think one of the big things about it as well is because, so like we sort of started dating in March, and after a couple of dates, she was like, oh, by the way, like I'm going traveling for like 2 years. Going traveling for 6 months, moving to Australia for a bit. And I was a bit like, because from the first 2 dates, I was like, you know, when you can feel it, I was like, this is class. I know where this is going. And then obviously that sort of a bit of a bombshell. And I was like, damn, like this seemed like it was going so well. And then I've got that challenge. And like, but then we sort of openly, again, this comes from what I've learned from all of my previous relationships in general, like whether it's platonic or normal, like I've got to the stage where I understand the importance of like actually communicating and saying what's on my mind and not withholding anything. And that setting that foundation from the start of like, actually, you know, if we both want to do this, then we may as well do it. Like it's how it's going to look. Because I said to her, my opinion is we go all in and just see what happens. Like I would rather, and I was never going to walk away from it in that point. It was always going to be, if she walked away, then I would have been like, fair enough, like completely fine. But luckily she had the same mindset of me and she felt that connection, chemistry, whatever you want to call it as well. And then from that point onwards, when I knew we were all in, it was like this cloud of November, like looming of her leaving. But I think in life, it will present you with challenges that give you the opportunity to become a better person, better version of yourself. And I obviously realized throughout that period, because I was so like on my own, on my business, and like thinking about what am I going to do? I would obviously talk to people about stuff, but they'd often say and give me ideas that I was already thinking of or whatever. But then talking more about what I'm doing on the business side with her, and then she's in design. So like, she was like, she was basically like, that's shit, like send it over to me, I'll make it better. And I was like, oh, great. Like that's actually something that I've never had before. And actually something that I was really grateful for, and like talking through certain things. And she's like, if, you know, even now when she's not here, like how's it going? I'm like, yes, I was like, I'm a little bit stressed because this is happening. She was like, okay, tell me what's happening. I like say it exactly. And then that was in yesterday morning. And then I was like, actually, it was from communicating with her, like, oh, actually, this is what I'm going to do about that to try and get to some sort of outcome. And then later on in the evening, all of the effort that I put into doing that ended up in loads of people messaging me the same thing at the same time, and sort of another idea that led on to something that may eventually solve that problem. So it's that problem solving part of it, and that support more than anything. It's like because you know, as a like solo entrepreneur, there are like all these ups and downs, and sometimes like you need to squash that curve. And I've saw someone talk about like squashing that curve, like the ups and downs, making sure that you're staying as close to neutral as possible, not getting too high with the highs, not getting too low with the lows. And I think having someone that can help you through both of those as well, like obviously experiencing the successes or whatever, and then but also like when you're feeling that, or like talking about it, because when you're on your own and on your own path, like it feels lonely, it is lonely. And I actually vocalized that to her for the first time. I was like, yeah, it's actually pretty, like everyone else goes out from 9 to 5 and is interacting with so many other people, and I'm just like sat on my laptop for 8 hours. I see people at the gym in the morning, I get back and I speak to my parents, and then I'm like, unless I'm on a couple calls, I'm on my own. So it's a very different environment, and I'm someone who thrives off other people's energy. So that is a challenge in itself. But yeah, I've definitely found, in terms of just like the position that is presented me in, of having to again relinquish control of, I am gonna see her for 2 years, but like I'm not gonna have that frequent contact. The time zone is gonna be different, all these different things. Managing that process and that adjustment, that realization of, okay, life's going to be completely different. I can either, if something small comes up in my head, pay attention to it. This is sort of what I was chatting about a lot, is like, it's easy for things to come into your head when someone's that far away and you're not getting that level of communication. It's like, oh, why am I not getting a message at this point? And obviously at the start it's like finding the middle ground of terms of communication, but we're sort of towards the end of the second week now and still feeling happy, if not happier than when she left, because it's like the communication levels there. We both know and are confident that if it keeps going like this, like we'll be absolutely fine. I'm lucky enough to be able to go and visit her in a month. Actually today I'll be seeing her. So yeah, that having someone in your corner that close that's like fighting your battles with you, I think is really important, and also pushing you to be better, because there are days where it's obviously difficult, and like her mindset is like, she's kind of mad, to be honest. Like there was one day where she ran a half marathon and then played 2 games of hockey back to back the next day, and I'm like, you need to stop. Like her fit in terms of physical fitness, I'm always just like, yeah, just like that's the inspiration I take. 'Cause like even if like I would be staying over and then she'd like wake up at crack of dawn and go to a fitness class, whatever it was, and I was like, that wasn't in my routine, my mindset at all. And I'm like, you know what, fair. So it's all these different things that eventually, like you say, I think the person that you pick to be in your corner and your partner for life is probably one of the most important decisions you make. So I feel like I'm very much on that path at the moment.
Yeah, and I can relate to all of that. I can relate to all of that. I'm always learning so much about her and just her way of doing things. We were speaking before the call. You know, I had this very like masculine structure, way about doing things. Oh, what's the best strategy for this business? And there she is, living in alignment, doing all the stuff.
Yeah.
And listening to her body, and she's just attracting all this stuff into her life, like all these opportunities, and it's just her being her without forcing it. So yeah, always learning. And I think when you can build when you're young, when you haven't, for lack of a better term, made it yet, quote unquote, I think that builds a really solid foundation for your relationship, because they're sort of with you from the beginning. So it's all just really exciting.
Yeah, big time. And I think it's also an opportunity as well, like for me to just then, not that she was a distraction, but like she's growing, she's doing her own growth through traveling, seeing the world, living in a different place. She'd been working for 5 years straight out of uni, not done it before. And I'm like a massive advocate for doing that. I was never ever going to say like, I don't want you to go, I want you to stay here. Like that was never even an option. So it gives me the opportunity now, is like I can actually just, for want of a better term as well, just like lock in, like fully, like this is my main focus now. Obviously, like I'll put time towards that communication and making that and keeping that healthy, but this is my opportunity to be like, all right, I'm actually going to make this so that then 2 years down the line, I'm not like wishing it away. I'm like making use of it. I'm building every day, keep stacking those days. And hopefully I'll get to the point, obviously I'm lucky enough to go out there for a little bit. And then next year, just sort of building on each tour, like sort of keep going. The time will fly by when you're doing things as well that you're passionate about. Both of us will be doing different things. We'll be growing in different environments, but still having that sort of connection that can last thousands of miles, which is something that's pretty special in itself anyway, to know that you have that. So yeah, I think it's just an always like that in particular part of it. I saw it at the start, and I said this, I was like, I actually just see this as a massive challenge. Like, it's a massive challenge for me, than one that I would ordinarily never put myself through. But like, obviously I pretty quickly realized that there was no other option for me, because yeah, I was just like head over heels and knew that she was going to be the person. So I was like, all right, it's going to happen. It's now, how do I deal with it? How do I make the best out of it? And again, similar to parallels to other things in life, like how do I make the best out of this situation? And now I feel like I'm doing a pretty good effort of that, and, you know, relinquishing that control, letting her grow in her own way, do her own things, travel, which, you know, it's literally, that's what your 20s are for, really. So yeah, going and living your life, and then ultimately being the best version of myself for when she comes back. It's the plan.
Yeah, that's it. I look forward to hearing how it all progresses, brother. I think it's really cool, and yeah, as you've alluded to, it's just another stage of your journey.
Yeah, 100%.
Your development. We've covered a lot of ground here, which is awesome. Reaching the hour mark.
Yeah.
What we'll do, we'll head into the closing traditions of the podcast. The first 2 are questions asked by myself, their routine every week, and then the third one is asked by one of the Growth Voyage listeners. The first one, pretty simple. It's a song recommendation.
Wow. I've been listening to so much music recently. Very different genres. I'll try to go for something a bit more niche. Any song that I've been listening to, or like for any purpose.
Any purpose, yeah. I know quite a few people now have wanting to list more than one. So that's permitted.
I'm literally like going through my playlist trying to think of the ones that I've added recently. Well, to be fair, one of my favorite artists is Loyal Kana. So that's like UK sort of UK rap, like nice, really melodic as well. So one of my favorites is Ottolenghi. I think that's one of the most beautiful songs. So yeah, that would be my recommendation because I saw him live at the start of this month. So I think that's pretty appropriate.
Yeah, he's still going. I remember seeing him when I was 17.
Really?
Masters Festival.
Did Brixton Academy at the start of November, and it was he's been one of my favourite artists for a long time, so that was pretty special. I actually saw Oasis in the summer as well, and at that time my favourite song was Slide Away, which was something that really related to my life at that time as well, to do with like the relationship and long-term thing. So that was one that I was like, I'd listen to and I would like, you know, when you listen to music and you just feel every ounce of it. That's one of those, that's proper like rock and roll, but those two would be my suggestions.
Yeah, I love it. As you've suggested, there's some which really sort of hit you in the right places.
100%.
Fantastic. Second one, I know you've mentioned one already, but it's a book recommendation.
Yeah, so that one, The Myth of Normal Gabor Mate. I will add another one. I've read a couple. In fact, I'll just say the book that I just finished recently, which was Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Again, this is talking about that sort of voice in your head, that not letting it control your life and the different situations that might arise, that, you know, what your ego what might end up happening if you pay attention to all of these thoughts, or cases from history where, you know, people have paid attention to it, and it's really interesting seeing it in like spectacular failures, all these different things, or the opposite, people who have, you know, one of the things that it was talking about was Malcolm X, you know, before he went to prison, a lot of people might not, I didn't know, I was reading it and like saying he was a robber, drug dealer, pimp, all these things, but then he was sentenced to about 20 years in prison and then used that as active time as opposed to passive time, and used it to learn and be a better version of himself, as opposed to what a lot of people may do and just, you know, be like, play the victim, all these things, becoming a different person out of it. So that's just one that I found really interesting in terms of challenging the way that I think and the thoughts that I pay attention to and the way that you want to be ultimately if you want to be successful, and examples of what happens when you don't, really, because I found that really fascinating.
Yes. And I think you're a wicked example of that. Yeah, again, this kind of victim mentality. A lot of people don't know they're a victim, that they're seeping into it. It's a very easy thing to do because we can all relate to that feeling, right? Feeling like the world's going against you, everything's coming crashing down. I think you've been a wicked example of just, okay, cool, we feel it. And usually it's either one or the other, but you've actually learned to feel, process what's going on, and then move forward and take responsibility for your life, which I think is fantastic, a real inspiration.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
A lot of guys, man. And yeah, I'm definitely getting called to read The Myth of Normal because Yaz, the previous guest, she recommended it too.
Yeah. And
I'll usually have this where I remember back in the early episodes where Joe Dispenza's name kept on coming up.
Yeah.
And breaking the habit of being yourself kept coming up. And so I thought, okay, when I hear something several times, I'm like, the universe is trying to speak with me.
Yeah.
So, and I read that book and it was absolute game changer. So
that's one I haven't read yet, which I need to as well. So I'll add that onto the list. I'm currently reading because I'm like, the Stoic thoughts is something that I'm paying a lot of attention to. And I'm reading the letters of a Stoic, which is Seneca's letters to and from his cousin, which is, again, so interesting hearing someone's thoughts and what's going through their head like thousands of years ago, and that philosophy of all these things that you can really easily apply to your life. And I find it so interesting because it's literally directly from him. It's his thoughts. And I just find it fascinating picking all these different things from people that are clearly incredibly well educated. They've put a lot of time into thinking about what they're doing. So much of it backed up by science in The Myth of Normal. In fact, all of it, like anything he says is not without like scientific basis. So you're not just like, it's not an opinion piece. This is like, it's science. It's like, he's challenging, like, why aren't doctors asking you these questions when you go, like, why aren't they saying what's happening in your life? Because ultimately that could be what's causing what's ever happening to you. So definitely read that. Make that like next on the list.
I will. I've got
yeah, the list on the same. The list just grows, man. It does just grow.
It does, especially because I'm asking for a bit of time. Yeah, and then I'll like check out the author, and then they've got other ones, and then I see this podcast.
Yeah,
it's quite a lot. But some wicked suggestions there, and I love that. Also, a lot of the time it's from lived experience.
Mm.
It's not it's not just, okay, this sounds nice, like a nice idea. It's no, I've actually lived through that and I can live to tell the tale. But it's similar to your journey as well and the lessons you've learned, which is awesome. The final question is from one of the Growth for Wage listeners.
Let's do it.
And yeah, this one was from Kenny Young. And this is an interesting one because it's something I can relate to. And I wonder if you can as well. But his question was, is extreme independence strength or is it self-inflicted loneliness? Essentially, the idea that rejecting society, is it like wisdom or a trap, right? Because you're not following the norm.
Yeah.
You're kind of going against the grain. You see beyond the illusions, but then can you maybe trap yourself so much that you begin to isolate yourself from society?
I think it's going to be maybe a classic answer to that question, but obviously the middle ground is exactly where you want to be because you want to pay attention to both. So I think in terms of independence and your own thought, one thing I would say, which is what we were speaking about before, is like letting anyone's other perspective or thoughts on anything you do is a complete waste of time and energy. So in terms of independence in that way is do whatever you want to do. Maybe gain the information of people around you, but ultimately don't listen to the advice of anyone who you wouldn't take criticism from, because there's the other way around. Don't take criticism from anyone you wouldn't take advice from, because paying that energy to anyone's other's perspective is just completely pointless. And I think following in and believing in like your own path, your own choices, getting yourself to that point is very important. But if you think you can do that on your own, then you're wrong, because you might think, I can do all these things, I'm strong enough. But that human interaction and human connection is part of what has got us here anyway. We're inherently social creatures. And if you're not using that as whether it's a form of expression, if it's playing football, if it's, that's your release or anything, like without those communities, as we spoke about, and those different, because that was ultimately what made me invest in myself, was I am so lonely here on this journey and I want to get better. The community side of it was massively what I invested in. So it was like, yes, I'm getting information on how to improve my business, but I'm getting exposure to people who are also building their own businesses and sitting on calls with them for a couple of hours a week and getting that human connection, which is so important. So I would say obviously independence is important. It's like you don't want to constantly have your hand held through different situations, because obviously you're never going to learn things about how you behave in certain situations, and that's really important. And this also goes back to what we've luckily both found, is that doing it without, in particular, a life partner who isn't fully supportive of that, I would say that's the main really important decision in your life, because that person's going to be with you through the good and the bad and the whole wherever you go, and trying to create that small circle and that support system, which I've been very blessed and lucky to have. So I've sort of got, that independence, and that, I spend a lot of time on my own and I am able to give the best version of myself in that environment. But if I don't have my physical releases in football, I'm injured at the moment and I'm feeling it. I'm missing the connection with the boys on the weekend, like playing just those little things and asking people for advice or just speaking to them on certain situations. If you keep it all in your head, it's just going to build, and it's like that needs to release somehow. So I would say like right down the middle, because you want to be independent to an extent, but you don't want to over rely on other people, but you need to have both to be able to fully thrive.
Yes, I think that was wonderfully put. And it kind of reminds me as well, when we are looking to change our lives, I think there is a tendency to kind of reject society a bit and just go down the lone path. But as you suggested, I think when you keep it all there, I think that's where you kind of end up in this weird middle zone where, okay, you've decided you want to change. Maybe you've had that wake-up call, relationship ending, but then you're not quite where you want to be yet. And I think there is perhaps a part of a journey where you are going to be a bit lonely and figuring stuff out. But then absolutely, if you can then find the right support, find the right people, learn to be vulnerable, I think you will be rewarded for that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you've been a wicked role model for a lot of men, just in terms of the way you've sort of taken accountability. I am intrigued before we finish, like, did you have a role model growing up, or who did you look for in terms of, even just because it came up again with the men's International Men's Day. I think a lot of the time we need like a good, strong role model growing up Did you have that then? Because obviously you mentioned before dad passing away from a younger age.
Yeah.
How did that sort of impact you? And were you then looking externally a bit more for answers, perhaps?
I would say maybe the 4 like role models, like because I'm a family guy, is like I'm lucky enough to have 3 granddads. One of them is step granddad. So 3 different granddads who all give me different things. And, you know, one of them was obviously my dad's dad, and he has a lot of wisdom. I've got a quote from him tattooed on my arm. He used to say, every day is a good day. And that's actually something that I did I'm like sort of posting more on my Instagram to improve my speaking skills and remove filler words. And that was one of the topics I chose to speak about, because it gave me the perspective of, I used to he'd just say it and I'd be like, shut, like, you know, you think old people just say stuff. And then like, it literally wasn't until like the latter stage of his life where I was like, you know what, that's actually really appropriate, because even if shit things happen in that day, like you're still here, you're living and breathing, you're experiencing things that so many people who are living their last day or have lived their last day would kill to experience. So having that perspective every day and going and making the most of it as a result of that is something that sat with me like massively. And he was a big role model for me. My granddad on my mum's side, who like moved in to help us help navigate through that with her. And then my step granddad is like all these different things. He's been in the army, you know, so and then my stepdad as well. He was obviously a bit later on, but again, police, army, like proper example of, you know, what it's like to, and hearing all the stories from that as well is, you know, the positions that he put himself in ultimately to fight for his country, and he's very proud of that. So I'm lucky enough to have had sort of those 4, and my uncle as well. So I'd say that as like a 5 core of people, because my uncle's my dad's brother, and he lived close and obviously very close with my cousins on that side, and he's done a lot for our family and also been an incredible success of himself. He's got freedom of the city of London, sort of, you know, come from, you know, that generation. My dad and my uncle, they, you know, didn't grow up with much at all, but they both, you know, came to London and made a lot out of themselves. So a real role model in terms of entrepreneur and how to get to that spot. And I worked with him for about 6 months. And even though I knew that I wasn't going to be in property, just learning business and the fundamentals from him, and going to and from meetings and him talking about the different dynamics that happened in that meeting, or just, you know, debriefs and things like that, that was incredibly useful for where I'm getting to now. And obviously someone to speak to who's been on that sort of journey. So yeah, unsurprisingly, given of everything we've spoken about, it all comes from family. So very lucky to have that close knit circle, and yeah, lucky enough still have a few grandparents still alive, still have very, very close connections with the people around me. And yeah, you know, as you grow, I think you still get more role models. Like, you know, my brother's a couple of years older, other people in my life. I'm like, yeah, what you're doing is sick, and I really appreciate that. And it gives me different perspectives and different reasons to drive forward.
Yeah, I can see why you value family so much now. It's played such a huge role in your development at all different levels. And again, it's funny just alluding to like your grandfather as well. Sometimes they'll tell us stuff and we won't really absorb it until it's the right time. Yeah. So we can hear the same message over and over, but then once we're ready to hear it, we'll really integrate. And I think by the sounds of it, you have absorbed a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's not by the stuff they say, it's the stuff they do. It's even you working for 6 months, for example, being surrounded by people, observing their habits and behaviors, you taking that on. So yeah, I can't wait to do a part 2 in however many years time. Man. We can look back on look back on the journey. Yeah, wicked. Ben, this has been awesome. Where can people find you if they're interested in following what you're doing? Yeah, so Tiki Taka Tours on Instagram, tiki.taka.tours on TikTok, and then my personal page, TudorX. And I've also got another one that I sort of post more of the stuff that I've been talking about and start sort of showing my more, I guess, vulnerable side. And like I use it as like a behind the scenes type page, but I'm sort of using it now to produce a bit more content and stuff, just talking about a lot of the stuff that we've spoken about and my perspectives, and trying to use that to, again, build that trust in people of like, this is who I am behind the scenes. I'm not just a football, I'm this family, you know, perspective, all these different things. So yeah, you can find that through TudorX is my main. So you can find all that through there as well. Brilliant. We'll put all of these in the description underneath. Ben, thank you so much, buddy. Thank you, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wicked.